Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing the transport lab at home in my kitchen. So welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be using an unshelled or deshelled egg. So what we did is we took a number of eggs and we soaked them in vinegar for a couple of days. And what that does is it removes that hard outer shell and it leaves this inner membrane underneath. So this egg is kind of squishy. You can see I'm squishing it. Sometimes people call them rubber eggs because they kind of bounce a little bit. And this is just a regular raw egg that's had the shell removed. So the membrane is still intact and all of the proteins and other macromolecules that you would expect to find in an egg are inside the egg. And so this works really well for us to look at and observe osmosis in a model that is similar to what happens in a cell. Now, a cell is obviously way too small for us to see, pick up, take the mass of, all of that stuff. And so we're going to use these eggs instead. And what we did is after the shell was dissolved, I took one of the eggs and I put it overnight in some corn syrup. So corn syrup is going to be one of the things that we use. And then deionized water is the other thing that we use. Corn syrup, obviously very sugary, very high sugar content. That would be our hypertonic solution. And our deionized water is water that's been treated. It's almost like distilled water. It's been treated to remove any impurities. So it's really just pure water. And so it doesn't have any solute in it. So this would be our hypotonic solution. And what we're going to do first is we're going to take a look at our egg that's been sitting in corn syrup. And we're going to take the mass of it. And of course, I didn't think this out very well because I only have one hand, but that's okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to weigh it in this dish. And we have a fancy scale. So even though the dish has a certain weight, we can zero that out. Sometimes people call that tearing the dish. And so now we're starting at 0. So when we put the egg in there, it's not counting the dish, it's just counting the egg itself. Doing this one-handed. You can see how different this egg looks, right? Remember, it's been soaking in corn syrup overnight. And we're going to put it there and we're going to measure the mass of the egg. And we're going to put it back in our beaker, and instead of corn syrup, oh, did I just break it? No. And instead of corn syrup, we're going to add deionized water, and we're going to find out what happens. So remember that this egg serves as a model of the cell. So it has a semi-permeable membrane around it, and the proteins and other stuff inside the cell can't move across the membrane, but water can. So when we put it in corn syrup, this is what we got. And when we put it in deionized water, we're going to see what happens after an hour in deionized water. And then we can observe the difference as well as measure the difference in mass. So we'll be back in an hour. Welcome back. It's been about an hour since we put the egg in the distilled water, or the deionized water, sorry. I'm going to zero this out again. So we've got our glass dish on here, and we're going to remove this egg from the distilled water. And now you can see how different that egg looks. It's much fuller and it's not as floppy looking. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to weigh that. And now we're going to get rid of this water and we're going to put it back in corn syrup, and we're going to see what happens. And what, of course, we're doing here is we're changing the osmotic pressure on the egg. And so the proteins and other macromolecules that are inside this egg can't go across this membrane, this sort of inner membrane under where the shell was, but the water can go across. And so we're changing the pressure by either making it a hypertonic or hypotonic solution, and that means the water is going to move across that membrane. So we've dumped out the water. The egg is going to go back in the beaker, and then we're going to fill up that beaker with some corn syrup. It's probably good enough. Ugh, it's messy. All right, so what you can see here is, unlike the water, the egg actually floats in that corn syrup, but that'll be okay. And it's pretty tough. So we're gonna let it sit there for another hour, and then we're gonna measure the mass again. Okay, we're back, and it's been about an hour since we, a little bit over an hour since we put our egg in our corn syrup, our hypertonic solution. So we still have our measuring cup on the scale, and we're going to zero it out so that we're going to get a good measurement. And I'm going to take this egg out of the corn syrup. Ooh, it's goopy and sticky. Ooh. All right, I'm going to take it out. And I can already feel that it's not quite as, I don't know, swollen as it was before. So I'm going to put this on hold for 1 second. I'm going to rinse it off, and then we're going to measure the mass. Okay, we've rinsed it off, so the egg no longer is all sticky. And we're going to come over here, and we're going to measure our mass of our egg. And one of the things I'm going to ask you to do, I can take a screenshot here, is to think about what happened here. Is the mass different? And if it is different, why is it different? Why did the mass change when the egg was put in corn syrup versus water? And why did the look of the egg change? So remember, when I first took it out, it was super floppy, right? Now, and then when we put it in the water, it got very, very, very swollen, very big. And now it's, I don't know if you can tell. Let me put it on the counter. It kind of smushes down. It's not like one of these eggs. You can kind of see the difference. That's where it started, as a huge egg like that. And it's kind of flat on the bottom. So what I want you to try and think about is, why is this happening? The osmotic pressure is changing because we're changing the fluid that the egg is sitting in. And this happens with cells as well. If you change the tonicity of the fluid that they're in, so for example, instead of having normal saline, if you have extra salt or extra sugar or something like that, it will affect what happens to the cells. They can get bigger or smaller. If they get too big, they can actually burst. If they get too small, they can shrivel up, and at least for red blood cells, they can kind of get stuck in some of the blood vessels. Thanks for watching. See you in class.